What is it?
That's it.
Okay, call the meeting over. This is the board of directors. It's the details of the district's description of the general manager's position. It
Have to
was
speak up.
online, right?
It was posted.
It was posted. Did you all get it? Look online and read it.
Did not yet.
Just in case.
I don't know if there's handouts. Did you have your phone or something to pull it up?
One's fine.
Oh, Bill's got a
Thank you,
couple.
Bill.
Thank you.
It's always good if you're gonna come to a meeting, to check the website for the background documents and look to see of those background documents, what are interest to you exactly, and get yourself familiar with those, because what some of these meetings don't bring with them is a certain focus from members of the public that aren't doing their homework ahead of the meeting. And I'm cognizant of the fact that night meetings are kind of new to the district again, and so people are getting engaged, and I think it's great that people are coming. But I visit state boards all the time and provide testimony to them. And in every instance, in counties and other sorts of commissions, etc. And if you want to make a meaningful, if you want to impress the board, now we're just members, so you don't have nothing here to really impress. But it's always good to do your homework and, you know, write down what you want to say, and even submit it as a letter, because then you have a nice record of what you've submitted. Now that Beverly has been doing a great job of doing that, so the Happy Valley Community Committee's developing a paper trail of what their expectations are, and the board can be responsive to that, and you can hold the board accountable to that, because you can say, well, on July 28th, I sent you a letter, and we just discussed this, and it came up at the board meeting, and you guys didn't have time to talk about it then. Well, I want to talk about it now, and it go back on the agenda, etc. So you kind of build a case for why it's relevant, etc. Not to go on and on, but it is useful if you are willing to commit the time. It's time consuming. So,
Can you tell us where
it is? Yeah, because
Bill, is it posted on the website?
Is it not in the board packet?
No.
I got points for it, and I couldn't find it.
Shame on me for suggesting it was. I'll put that in the minutes.
Cedric, I had
Yes.
written about two
I
or three
drove by
letters to
with
the
that
board
search up
Okay.
in the past.
Yeah.
And I almost thought that I was wasting my time because I wasn't at a meeting.
Well, I was blaming
Didn't
you
stand up and
anyway.
speak. I was thinking that it probably was just, lost in the district. And as far as the general manager position, I was actually surprised that I'm already going to search for a general manager, since Bill has been willing to fill that seat temporarily. He provides a lot of insight that we wouldn't have unless he was actually able to do the duties that he is today. He's familiar with things, and he's providing us information that once we had a general manager, then Bill is not in a position where he could, let's say, he is free with the information as he's been since he's been talking to us. And I really appreciate your honesty. And the question is really, whether or not, the community is getting information. We're not getting that information directly from you, and there, in my opinion, there's no real contest. The issue with whatever we had in the past, that's behind us. And I guess part of my hesitation is that with you in this position now, today, that we can ask you questions, you're willing to participate, you've got the time. But you're now in a responsible position for the employees, you're signed on as their general manager, so those are your duties. Once we hire a new manager, and you're back in the previous position, where you're not able to directly talk to us and then have the access to the information we were looking for. Such as just
Point well
little
taken.
tidbits. you know, things about money, things about what we've got happening, let's say, with the water towers. And in my situation, because there's a little bit trickling out of the towers, we talked about, you know, some back pressure, let's say on the line. The other things that are happening with the wells, what exactly is going on with, let's say, the conditions of the lines and why we go back, and we keep doing maintenance work. And I don't want to distract from the agenda, but my question almost becomes, you know, what's the daily cost of maintenance? What's the weekly cost, or what's the monthly cost, in terms of us just being able to maintain the water distribution system that we've got today?
Yeah, so.
Get back to the subject, what we're here for, please.
I agree.
Yeah.
So your point about the there's a little bit of noise early on when you start talking. And your point relative to the announcement for the general manager, if I heard you correctly, was you like the idea that Bill is in the position currently and are surprised that we're looking for a new general manager currently. And do you have a suggestion relative to those two comments, or just would you like to leave those lay out there kind of
Well, like I said, I was surprised. I'm happy with the progress that we're making.
Okay, I'll make a note of both those, we'll make a note of both those. And what's your first name and last name?
It's Chuck Jones. And yes, I have written letters to the board.
And we're, just to stray one more time from the agenda. I, as a board member, will promise you I will read any letter that comes in and try to, in some way, be responsive to that, because I know that lots of these activities, I go to meetings and the public isn't there because they're in the middle of the day, morning. And I just think that the public is at a tremendous disadvantage when they're not able to be at the meeting, and I'm cognizant of that. And the people that send in letters aren't there to also follow up. And so I'm super sensitive to the fact that this democratic process requires attendance and the ability to attend, etc. And it's our responsibility, I think, and if we're not doing it, bring it up, to be listening and hearing what you're saying and respond to that. In some sort of, I hopefully can respond in a way that is satisfying, but I can't guarantee a satisfaction. That's Rolling Stones theory. Got it.
Has anybody had a chance to read?
So, just to catch us up, you called the meeting to order.
Right.
We had a little bit of a back and forth about whether or not the item was, the background information was on the website, and we had a little bit of public comment under, I guess that was open time. We didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it
It's on the agenda.
It says, okay.
If you all want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So on three, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so you had sent me the package previously, so I can look at that from here, because I didn't print it up. So a couple of the things under the compensation package that maybe just might be a concern would be, under number, 4, lifetime retiree medical coverage. Because I think that was discussed at some point in time, that may not be the way we're going. It was suggested that it be something different. So I don't know if that can be changed now, or that's a touchy
Yeah, that's a big commitment too.
That's it, right, it's a big commitment, and I know it was talked about from here on, you can move forward and reduce the retiree medical, but I don't have any expertise in that to know what that might be. And then, I thought there was one other thing there. I had 2 things, but I can't find it now. I guess on number 3, it's talking about tiers, and so maybe that's different, because I think Bill said the other night that we don't have any tier 1 employees, and he didn't think we had any tier 2 employees.
Mhm.
So I didn't know if those tiers applied to our current employees, or was this a different type of retirement tiers? So if it didn't, we don't need it, you could wipe that out. That was my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess, thanks for flagging both those, Beverly. Regarding the tier 1, I guess the only thing that comes to my mind would be is if, for whatever reason, a person that's, that applies and they're already in tier 1, they're enrolled in the public employees retirement system, they might look at it and go, well, I'm already in tier 1, why isn't that category available to me? So the tier 1, I think, is clearly enumerated in terms of how you qualify. You have to be in a particular date, by a date certain, I think it was 96 or something, I forget what date it was, but it's a ways.
Before 2004.
2004.
So if we hired somebody that was 52 years old or 53 years old, he's been under CalPERS someplace else, he's a tier 1 employee, we would have, if he was hired prior to that, so then we would take on his debt, his retirement debt, is that, if we did something like that? I know you can't discriminate on age, but you,
Yeah, I honestly
thought.
don't know that answer. I'm
Okay.
not that, Bill's nodding his head that you would take on that.
You take on a couple different things via the pension. So back to tiers is Clear Creek terminology. That's just, I think before 2004, you were considered a tier 1, and so on and so forth. I don't know the other dates. But there are no more tier 1s, there are no more tier 2s. I have some tier 2 benefits just to get that out there, and I can explain that later. The CalPERS, OPEB, the way it's set up, our ordinance says, all CalPERS service. So if someone works somewhere in a CalPERS agency, or would have contributed to CalPERS for 20 years, and they came here, in 1 month they would be vested, and then they could retire with lifetime medical. And that's the way it is written.
So we would get their debt, we would be responsible for that liability to the PERS system, even though 99.9% of the effort went to a different organization. Wow.
So,
But we're not gonna ask that question.
No, you can't.
so maybe just get rid of the tier aspect, retirement membership in the CalPERS, miscellaneous retirement plan, and just don't even put the tier portion there.
Because they're already there, they already know the information.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
My sister went for the state, I think, off of her.
And
Yeah. And she.
all right, I'm gonna make that note. I agree with that deletion. So with respect to the wording of this announcement, Bill, what's your thought on how the union's gonna approach? Well, I guess it's a non-union position though, so.
Correct.
So we don't have to worry about what the union thinks. Swell, okay.
He needs a contract or an MOU though at some point in time. I would think, or she.
Yeah.
No, just head.
You have a question back there?
Yeah, are we talking about what we would like to see in this position so far, or are we?
Well,
That's part of this, 3-page announcement.
right.
Yeah,
Did you get a chance?
there's
to
nothing
read
in
it?
there about having anything about water. You know, nothing about the certificates like Bill's got. You know, there should be they should have some kind of water related thing in there. And there's nothing about grants. If we don't have a grant writer, we need somebody to write grants. And there should be some experience in grant writing or that in there.
Yeah, okay, so I see here the manager will prepare a variety of district correspondence, reports, policies, procedures, and other materials necessary for the legal and functional operation of the district. We could stick grant writing in that.
It's kind of broad.
Yeah, and when you start thinking about your time available, you know, depending on what's on the stove cooking, you know, how much time would they have to write grants? I guess that would be an open conversation between the board and the manager as they undertook their position, you know, in terms of the board directing the manager to spend 20% of the time writing grants, or maybe it's a more effective way of doing that if they're not, you know, really prone to write a lot, would be for them to maybe spend 20% of their time. I'm just throwing 20% out there just wildly. Working with, I forget which committee works on, the planning committee, I think, talks about infrastructure and working on things that help set the district up for making improvements. So we could direct them to work with the planning committee. But I mean, that's sort of, I think that's a bit fluid as the person undertakes the job. The board oversees the manager. They work at the pleasure of the board, right? I mean, so if the board had a priority that year to do grants, and they had a conversation with the general manager about what sort of time constraints they had from a day-to-day operational perspective, you know, how much time you have to take on this sort of a thing. You know, there's gonna be a give and take that goes on here. It's not gonna be rigid.
But it's real easy, Cedric, to just add where you have under experience, you know, you say they've got administrative experience working in the water delivery. The last sentence says something about candidates must have experience with developing budgets and understanding and working with the financial systems. You could just add in there knowledge of grant writing or prior experience with grant writing, just like you did up there, will be positively considered.
This is the ideal candidate, that under experience.
Correct.
Okay.
And that adds the expectation so they know and understand, because I'm not kidding you, Cedric, every meeting, the skipper has talked about the grants he hasn't written. And then this board talks about grants that need to be written. Erwin said grant 1,000 times. I could play a drinking game to Erwin's grant phone. But it hasn't happened, so the expectation needs to be set forth in the job description so that it's a known expectation.
And
Because
writing,
guess what, we're broke, we've heard that too.
and writing grants is not easy.
In reading this document that Skip passed on to us, the manager will direct and participate in the development and implementation of goals, grants, objectives, and policies and procedures. So,
I think if you go with what Skip did, you're gonna get an idiot like Skip in
no,
there.
he wasn't an idiot.
Well, in my opinion, he didn't do jack out here.
I'm sorry,
And,
but he got a lot of grants for us.
well,
So what's
what grants have
I don't
replaced
want,
any of the
we're not here,
pipes?
I'm not here to argue about that.
We're not
We're
ready to
here,
argue.
I'm just telling you what he wrote.
So can you tell us where that was at, Johanna, so I can follow you? Where in your dialogue about the grant part, so I can read that?
This
We don't have it.
Skip gave
She's
to
ad
us,
libbing.
to the board,
Oh, that's something separate?
yes,
Oh.
yes, and I kept it because
Okay.
he had made some good points. And he should have gotten it,
That's it.
and he should have gotten it through the board.
Yeah, and so.
You had it,
Yeah.
so, and he does mention it in here, right there.
Yeah, this one was circulated, and then we had a fair amount of feedback from the community, and so we ended up with
Revising it, yeah.
the new revisions. So the manager will direct and participate in development and implementation goals, grants. Direct and participate. So that's not specifically calling out, and some of this, I'm a little concerned about it says must, and this candidate must have administration experience working in the water delivery industry. Is that wide enough? I mean, is that wide enough? For example, a Bachelor of Civil Engineering comes out of school, they've got 3 years of experience doing underground piping for gas and electric, maybe not necessarily water delivery per se at, from the plant to here. Maybe they've taken business administration and have a minor in business. They wouldn't qualify for that. Would it make sense to hire someone like that? I'm not just open-ended question here. And rely on people like Bill at the water plant to provide, and the rest of the Clear Creek team to provide some of the working knowledge of the system, with an expectation that if this person is bright and is an engineer and is gonna work towards their, maybe they already have their stamp, but they haven't worked in the water delivery system. Not to say we're gonna be able to secure a civil engineer, licensed civil engineer for this position, but it crosses my mind that a qualified civil engineer that may not have worked in the water industry might be a useful candidate to entertain at least an interview. But if it's a must, you might not ever get to an interview. That's why I don't want to, I'm just thinking in terms of casting a net that gets us people, the kind of person we want, but doesn't necessarily pre-filter people that could be really intriguing in terms of a potential candidate. Because ultimately we go, you're just a little too green around the water gills, so to speak, or what have you. But it would be,
Well, your dialogue in here is preferred that the candidate have at least 5 years. Doesn't say he has to. So that's open-ended.
No, I'm under experience, must, candidate must have.
Well, I was in experience also just down a little further.
But that's administrative experience, not necessarily
Yeah.
technical certification. And if the district, it's nice if there's additional people on the district, I think, that have the certifications, I suppose. But you just gotta make sure you have at least one that covers the operational.
What if Bill retires? If Bill retires, what's that manager gonna do? He doesn't know anything about the water.
Right.
You have to have
Yeah.
somebody that will back up.
Yeah. and-
Phil goes on
You're
vacation,
right.
or the GM goes on
And
vacation.
So it would
part
be
of-
better off to have him so that, you've got somebody in there that knows how to do water.
Yeah, I understand.
You're paying a lot of money
You
for
can
this
have
guy.
book smart people, but they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I threw that out there for us all to chew on like a nice piece of gristle. But Bill has suggested to us in our conversations I think it was at the end of the closed meeting, when we had the personnel meeting, maybe it was the meeting before last, where we requested he take the position and he accepted as interim manager. He said this is temporary. And so insofar as he didn't want to just be an interim in limbo forever, I think is how that should be characterized.
Are you applying?
So,
Are you applying?
That's a good answer.
You're already dealing with our BS anyways.
so
We like you.
So that's what I'm thinking about experience. I don't want to have it, I want people that aren't qualified for sure. I just don't want to have, I want to have opportunities to talk to people that are, hell, maybe somebody what if grant writing, we all of a sudden gravitate to someone that worked from the water board that was good at, maybe it was an office administrative assistant that could run a business like nobody's business, but also could write grants. How would they weigh against someone, knowing that, you've got a bench, you got a baseball bench, you got people coming off the bench to do the lines, the meters, the et cetera, you got the people at the water plant doing things up to snuff there. Who's playing short? It boils down to, you're gonna have to look at the team you're gonna field. And I frankly don't know at this point as much as I need to know about the team at Clear Creek. who's on first, who's playing second, who's made a lot of errors, all that stuff. And who would be a good person to bring in, as do we wanna bring in?
You'll know, when you start interviewing people, people look brilliant on paper, and when you bring them in, it's
They're
like,
dumb as going off.
yeah.
I guess,
So-
Cedric, I guess it's been too long the same way. So,
Yeah.
you're gonna run across people that do know, I don't know, but you're gonna run across people that do know how to work with water, work with meters, work with people, and work outside of this place.
Yeah,
You gotta have somebody to go outside of here and make things happen,
yeah,
instead of sitting on their thumb.
yeah,
But you also have to make them pay accommodating to what their knowledge is. If they don't know squat, they do not start at the top.
yeah,
Most of them should start at the bottom and work their way up, earn the extra pay, prove themselves. In the MOU, it needs to state, if you want a pay raise, you need to meet these metrics. If you can't meet them, guess what? You either sit at the bottom or get the hell out.
okay. Just gonna make a note, because I'm doing some summary minutes, because I wanted.
That's all you have to do.
The night off, and you will have this recorded, and I figure this isn't a meeting, it's gonna be as contentious as some night, so let me just write this down. Discuss different qualities of candidate, and,
So have you guys given much thought as to how you're going to interview this person? Are you going to have the whole board do the interviews? Are you gonna, look at questions from other districts, or get your questions approved by the lawyer ahead of time, those things?
Yeah, the thing that concerns the benefits package is what's got me a little bit high center. With respect to, you bring up that issue with the lifetime health, that's a big item. It's a heck of a benefit.
Right, but we were advised not to have that from the auditor.
Yeah.
Mr. Waltz pointed out that we're not in the standard of Shasta County.
Yeah.
He's familiar with about 5 different districts, he's seen these things, and other places have made those changes. I am actually subject to that type of change, where my pension was dramatically cut around 2009. There is no such thing as lifetime pension. Once I hit 64 and a half and I apply for Medicare, my primary insurance, which would be through the union, if I meet the qualifications to even get it, it'll be secondary insurance. And that would be the point with regards to this health insurance package, which is really online at this point, because what happens is if Medicare is your primary insurance, once you hit 65, whatever that, suggestion of lifetime insurance is, that's secondary, not primary. So those rates, for instance with mine, what I was told that surprised me is that those rates actually get reduced once you hit age 65. So whatever the payout is that you're actually responsible for now with CalPERS, which I'm not familiar with, I'm a little confused about what current law is.
I believe in some of the documents I've read, they do switch to Medicare when they hit 75.
Correct, and then it's secondary.
Yeah,
It's not,
But again, you don't-
lifetime, but then you also have to pay.
right, that's the part, just need
Maybe
to
take the lifetime out.
So I don't know who's
Yeah,
paying.
I've already struck that as a suggestion to go as a draft that we're gonna forward to the board, whether or not the full board takes any action in terms of forwarding it or making additional edits, or maybe they'll requisite it back to the personnel committee for another iteration. Because this is where the drafting needs to happen. I mean, we're kind of workshopping it now, which is great, and but I hate to see us trying to get this done at the full board. So if they're not down with our changes, as we, craft them this evening, I would see that this item comes back to this committee for more work, but that's the purpose of
hope
the
not,
committee.
yeah.
Yeah,
But getting back to Beverly's question as to who would be interviewing, who knows enough about the whole system to have a concise interview to know that he's not, BSing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk the talk, but walk the walk.
What?
Well,
Okay, we've never had to hire a general manager, and all hiring was done by the general manager. Our approval, okay? And Steph hired Bill and all the other guys that are out there.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm sure he knew enough information, having worked 31 years here, what to expect. Now, whether you know it or not, they have to go through certain, studies to get up to the next stage. So they're always kind of going to school. And I'm talking about the guys out in the field. So there's nothing to stop them. They can continue their education in the water industry.
more specific to your question, I would suggest if it's not, inappropriate, I don't know if it would be inappropriate to have, like, Bill sit in, because if Bill applies, then it would be really awkward for him to sit in as an expert witness, but maybe we can, maybe we could bring in some other qualified consultant that might just donate some time.
I used other postmasters to come in and help me interview, so contact Centerville if he doesn't apply, contact Bella Vista general manager. It's very helpful having a couple of other people like that, in any other districts.
Then the other person was when Sandy brought in Audie and Martin. I don't know why he left, or if that was bad, on bad terms, or he seemed to know a lot from what he put on the internet about the whole functioning of the water district front to end. And Sandy also attested to that. And I don't know what the deal was on that either, as to why he doesn't work here anymore. But he seems pretty briefed on the whole system.
Have you looked at what the other, water districts have on their position descriptions for their water manager?
I haven't.
The ones that I looked at required a degree, an engineering degree, and,
An engineering degree.
yeah.
A lot of them.
Well, there's an engineering and training category before you get a license. And then if you're talking about someone in training, that's the people who go to college to. I'm almost struck by the fact that college isn't, a bachelor's. Part of minimum requirement for a manager, which would include accounting, perhaps engineering, business, whatever it is. But at least that someone's got the wherewithal to get a 4-year degree.
Yeah, education must be a high school graduate. At a minimum, credit will be given for college attendance, credit for associate degree, bachelor of science, or BA degree, and postgraduate work. So that's pretty open-ended. Obviously, the person that applies would have to.
I think your high school needs to be
Yeah.
taken
It
out of
should be
there.
a minimum of college education.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, 2
even if
years.
it's just a
Because
2-year BA.
there's a lot of, there's a lot.
I would be very surprised if I was selecting in the affirmative, a candidate that only had a high school diploma. I'd be wondering, I'd be aghast with myself, so I'd be surrounded, but.
Skip only had a high school diploma.
That's the old days though. The old days
That's
was the
true.
high school,
I'd say bachelor's.
not today.
A lot of your engineers have supervisor addendum to them, if you look at them.
It's a minimum.
It's a minimum, they have to have that.
Yeah,
To run the district, to run the administration and the field workers, that person is in charge of all the operations, including
Including
whatever's done in the
employees.
field.
Hiring and firing.
That requires safety orientation, understanding, shoring, everything that's gonna happen out there in the ditch.
yeah,
Bookkeeping.
And then in the office, we're back to, the accounting and the running of the office. That's a full plate.
That's why the
Do you
pay is
think
what it
do you
is.
think our compensation, this person that you're envisioning, do you think our compensation will attract that person?
There's a lot of people who need to go to work with us. If they are associated with water, they wanna be interested in water, and they understand the water distribution system, which is engineering in and of itself with regards to pipe.
Like civil,
So, yeah.
mechanical.
I have no idea what civil engineers.
But these are, yeah, you're looking at someone from the,
That's good.
you're looking at, this is the 80 to 120, yeah, you could get someone with, you could probably get someone with under 10 years of experience.
But then
You're only asking for preferred 5.
Yeah.
but then you could also.
So I guess I'm answering my own question. I guess the compensation would, I do concur with others in the audience that think that the 80 to 120 would get the sort of person. All right.
But you need to start at the 80.
Yeah.
You don't just look at it and go, yeah, okay, we want you, and we'll pay you the 120. No, we'll pay you the 80, and you earn your way up to 120.
Yeah. And just for the record, I can't commit to where I'm gonna land relative to what's
I'm just
gonna.
saying, they need to earn their way up to the top pay.
You could also do a written test, general test on basic skills
That's
like
an
that.
interesting thing to add.
You know, do a test on where they are, how they figure things out on a written test, just for, you know, like 2-page test or something. And then do a practical test out, you know, how do you approach a project, you know?
Not only that, but written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that they can, so that we know that they understand.
Right, how they're planning, how their, you know, logic is, you know,
Here's the situation, you
you
do
gotta
it,
figure it out.
you do a writing and tell us what you would do.
Yeah,
You do that in front of a panel, that's how that takes place.
well, you
If the
can.
candidate sits down, you ask them you ask that individual a question, and then you make up your mind right there.
Yeah, you know, and I've seen that in, so you have the initial solicitation of potential candidates. You
Right.
get a group of folks, and then you weed that group, and then the second group, you send them a question, thanks for the reminder, like a problem question, and you
Yeah.
expect them to write back a written response, kind of detailing how they might go about approaching
Right.
that. And
Right.
maybe it's a supervisor, you know, some kind of a disciplinary, how would you handle a
All of
disciplinary
it,
action,
yeah, all
or
of it.
maybe it's a.
That's in the interview process.
But you
Well,
know,
yeah, but if it's written, then they have a chance
Correct.
to think it through
Yeah.
and think about, you know.
You
maybe
don't want
less
them
on
to
the
think, you
fly.
don't want them to think it through.
No, they'll get it.
Well,
They'll get.
you can give it to them when they
I'd love to think it through, I want to think through everything.
They don't have time.
When's the last time you hired?
There's
Well,
a
for-
management, they don't have time to think, they need to know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
And if an emergency happens, we need to know that they
Well,
will be
maybe,
able to
I'm
do it.
talking about a written response.
I understand that.
Maybe one of the questions that, since you brought up the word emergency, maybe one of the written questions was, what about a certain emergency scenario?
right,
That they could tell us how they would respond to an emergency scenario. That might be
that
written.
would be, yeah.
Well, you could do that in your oral interview, make that one of the questions. Tell us something, how safety was involved and you corrected an issue, whatever.
Understood. And
But
so,
if you want them to do a written response, give them a time for the interview, whatever, have them come in half an hour early, give them the written paper, they have 30 minutes before their interview to write it. If you send it to them via email, you don't know who gave that answer.
Right, they could
You
have
do
anybody
not know if
else.
they wrote it, their mother wrote it, their girlfriend wrote it,
my,
but you want.
my experience with that is, though, you get a written response from them, and you do have extensive discussions about the written response with the candidate, and you'll know if they're bullshit at that point.
But you won't.
Oh, well, all right. With deference to your opinion. I hear you, loud and clear.
If they're smart and they
You
have
want
someone else, they will know what was written on there
All right.
inside and out.
We'll consider
Cedric
that.
concedes.
I'm just saying.
Well, think
Well, I'll
about
consider
this. Think about this, if you ask him a question, like she suggested, it's the same thing as he gets a phone call, okay? From something out in the district, he's gotta make a decision right away.
Right
At
there.
a point in time.
Absolutely.
And I think this written stuff forget it. I think you should talk with them or
Yep.
say,
That's
hey,
fine.
if this should happen, what would you do?
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because we can sit here and
A
write
quick
and
30-minute
talk.
pre-write to know and understand how they're gonna correspond in your community and how they're gonna correspond for Clear Creek Water District, that 30-minute pre-write, you're gonna see a ton.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I could answer questions, but I couldn't write it.
Well,
And his
There you go.
letter would have been by me to you,
That's the point
and he
too.
would have known the information, but I would have finessed it.
but,
Guaranteed.
and
Well, as
also,
long as,
Exact same book.
You know, and if you listen closely, the way he talks or she talks, you can get a feel for that person and what they, you know, there's three kinds, there's three kinds of leaders. One is, he lets everybody do anything. The second leader pays attention, talks to his workers. The third kind is the one that gets up and dictates. You want the person in the center. Anyway, you want a good guy. Hey, I'm glad you made us laugh. It breaks the tension.
You've been doing that too long. That's what's wrong.
Oh, dear.
Voice your opinion.
No, but it's very interesting, talking to a person, you know, and get the value from them. And, like some of you pointed out, did somebody at home fill the answer in, or say, and he's had time to think about it, okay? In an emergency, you don't want a person that's going to think about it, he's gonna react.
we'll take it on site, you know, just to.
That's why the 30-minute prior to.
Yeah,
the
right,
board.
yeah.
Then you can.
Yeah, if you ask them, if you ask them technical questions,
Yeah.
you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah,
know.
because they'll know the math, I'm sure there's math and whatnot, considering all that, you know, their answers.
Hey, is there any more questions?
When this goes out and we have candidates selected to do the interview process, will the public be informed as to what questions are being asked, or will the public be asked, what questions would you want to see in the interview panel?
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was thinking of one last, I need to, just a sec, I gotta edit, I'm gonna put a strike through, I gotta get rid of the high school graduate.
Yes.
What you want to say? Somebody paid attention.
So, the suggestion is that they have a degree, a BS or BA degree, and or postgraduate work.
Yes.
Fine candidate for. That's I haven't, spent that much time with, the workings of it seems like so much of this, I guess if they have a BA, it's so much, it's a nonprofit business, but it's a business. It's got, an engineering quality to it for sure, it's got a health and safety quality to it. There's a lot going on.
Well, even though it's not a non-profit, it still is a profit
I
in a
mean-
sense, because we're trying to get income in, so we can move forward.
Well, yeah, it's a boat that floats.
I think you're gonna have a lot of takers, if you put this out there for everybody to see, you're gonna have a lot of takers for this kind of money and benefits, and you'll have a lot of people to choose from, you'll have a lot of choices. And just make sure you get the right person that's been in the field. Whether they work here, or they work in LA, or they work wherever they work. Make sure you get somebody to.
It's strange that you gotta have a BS or a BA anyway. But you know what? I'm sitting here thinking of people that have started on the ground, worked up and went to college, but they didn't get that degree. They went, I'm thinking about my husband, okay? He was a stationary engineer for General Hospital in Los Angeles. Well, when he started, he basically didn't know anything, but having been in the Navy, he had some ideas, okay? They hired him, and he worked his way up. And so he was educated by the business that he was in, so he understood it. So when we moved up here, he got a job at Mercy, and they hired him because he knew how to run a hospital, because he had been in it for 8 years. He knew how to make the boilers work. He knew everything that they required. He had to do x-rays, okay? And that was, so he learned that. Anyway, what I'm saying to you is maybe there is somebody out there that has learned by experience. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Great point.
Great point.
And I think we can do that. So what you have to do is under education is that you put in there years of experience, give you some kind of whatever.
Right.
We'll be taking into
Substituted
consideration.
for education.
Yeah, we'll be substitute, yeah.
References too.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was good. Okay. Is that it, kids? Or-
No. You said. I didn't see on the agenda though, like looking going, hey, there's no comments at the end. So are we at the end yet?
No, just, I wanted to run something else past you all.
Okay.
So I wrote direct experience in water delivery service will qualify in lieu of
College degree.
college.
To some extent, I mean, they can't have worked in a water district for 6 months and that's their lieu of bachelor's degree. No.
Yeah, I hear
So that would be underground piping systems for water. And familiar with protocol,
Right.
working around live utilities. Power, gas, phone.
Thank you for that.
And interagencies too.
What I had asked Cedric, by the way, sorry, when the interview questions are up, when there's a pool of candidates and it goes up for interview, will we as the public get an opportunity to put in input into the questions that are going to be asked on the panel, or?
So I'm just gonna make a note the public would like to see, review
The question.
review the questions, candidates' questions, and provide input.
Thank you.
And the only thing I can say about that, and that would be helpful, not to say we're gonna ask every question, it's, you know, some of them might not be appropriate, we don't wanna step on our toes relative to, asking the wrong question, and causing some sort of getting sued for asking the wrong question.
Well, what you could do is ask the group to write questions, and we can check the questions out and say, this is inappropriate.
Or you can pick and choose.
Yeah. That I didn't write down, but that goes without saying, we
Right.
can pick and choose from those.
Right.
So that was it, let's just get back to the power, so credit for direct experience in underground water, power, phone, and/or
Underground services.
Gas.
phone,
You have to
or other
understand,
underground services.
you gotta understand the locate process. Someone needs to understand 811, that's what you call the head locates. How long those locates are good for? They're good for anywhere from, let's say, 48 hours to maybe 7 days. Once those marks are no longer there, they have to be remarked.
Yeah,
Legally, you can't mark that yourself, but that can be done, so that
Yeah.
you know where other services are.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
law.
and so when I hear that, so one thing that comes to my mind when I hear that, see, so when I think of a manager understands a bigger picture, is skilled in a couple of skill sets that the board finds very attractive relative to whether it's, budget or grant writing or personnel or all three together. But knowing whether or not to call 811, I would hope that the rest of the team that we're fielding, that's checked, and it's checked by a whole bunch of different people. And the DM, he could learn that on the job, right? He wouldn't need to walk, it would be useful, but I wouldn't disqualify a candidate if he didn't know that necessarily. I mean, hell, I know that, and I'm not even in the water business. So but you know what I mean?
This is a specific category with water. It's not that broad. This is relatively narrow.
Yeah, I hear you. Maybe I'm being too.
Underground is related to underground utilities and overhead utilities. You can't take out overhead or things that are underground because someone has to pay for that.
Yeah, I hear you.
And if you hit the wrong thing, you'll blow us up. I know. Send her though.
Oh, don't entertain that thought.
So the only other thing I want to bounce off y'all is the, sheet here. I can find it. Oh, under experience, candidate must have administrative experience working in the public or private water delivery industry or agency, period. And I deleted, or suggestion to delete, similar to the Clear Creek Community Services District. Just because similar, I mean, how similar? It just becomes, does it need to be 2,000 connections? Does it need to be 5,000 connections? If they really knew what the hell they were doing and had a boomer, really bang on 100 connections, is that good enough, or is that not similar enough? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, that's the only other change I made.
I have one that I don't see anywhere in here.
Yeah.
They should be able to, be required to pass a background check. I don't see anything in here.
Drug test, background investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, every big company does that.
It has to be off the roll.
Well, there's legal documents.
I don't know if that's you can ask that question. I don't know. That could be a
That's a basis.
I don't know, I don't agree with Clear Creek's policy, but we don't do a pre-employment drug test or a background check.
Whoa.
Excuse me, I can't stop up.
Okay, we gotta add that to the list, everybody, you better write that down.
That's very important.
What problem?
You know where your bunch of good ones are coming on here.
But we just,
Seems like it's something you tax on the end.
You don't get the best you can ever problem.
You never know if you're hiring somebody who's been invested.
Number 10,
People go to work in a place where you have to pick up.
after compensation package, that's not a compensation.
Well, wouldn't be 10, it would be back down to number 7, because you're gonna take 2 and,
Yeah.
or you're gonna take 3 and.
I will say something about that, because out of the, Senator, out of the, Walmart DC, you have to create this
And why do they not living
Okay, that's all those things. I've never seen a fly from a page, and that's a 3-page, right? So I take it back.
Okay, so all I'm handing you, that I would like in your minutes again, in March, we handed the personnel committee, or asked the board for the personnel committee to please look at a few items. So we made a few modifications of those, I just added the drug test on the bottom now, because that's something I think that needs to be looked at too. Some of these, probably, we have the answers to, because Bill last Thursday answered a couple of questions for us, but we do need the personnel committee to look at, we ask that you look at stuff. If you don't like what we're asking, please come back and say, here's why, you know, so that you're not. So here's your copies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Right, so it's part of your background.
Did you raise any of these when you had Bill one-on-one out there with the?
Yeah, Bill actually,
Committee?
Bill talked about, what did he talk about? We talked about, the MOU a little bit, but that's one you guys talked about a little bit. The nepotism. So Bill talked about who supervises who, so that we don't have a nepotism problem. But I don't know that that's actually in your, nepotism policy. So, it may be in there, I can't remember. But you've got 3 employees related, so somebody has to be in charge of somebody else out in the field. So, I think they're aware of that, they're taking care of that, but maybe just the policy needs to be looked at to make sure that it's up to snuff.
Number one's a big one.
Yes,
Number
it
one,
is.
we could spend a year on.
Correct, and you have to, because you've got a new union. So that's one of those that you guys are gonna have to start right away in adjusting your employee MOU. That's a big one. Put that one last. Figure out.
I mean, you wanna start
Yeah,
it.
that's a big one. That's gonna be a real big one for you guys.
All managerial practices are in place, yeah, so that, some of these I look at and I, you know, the new, well, I don't know how much our insurance can get to some of this.
Well, mileage logs for one thing, Cedric. The mileage logs, I think we put that on the finance letter. But mileage logs needs to be instituted. They do the bare minimum to get by for insurance purposes. And
Yeah.
any of us that have worked government, you do it daily, so that's a big
So we
problem.
have Bill here, does Bill wanna address any of these things, or is that,
Can I get a
since
copy?
we're open town?
Well,
I'll take a picture of it.
no, I have a couple of extras, so I didn't bring probably enough for everybody.
Just go, wait just a second, I'm not gonna go take
You okay?
Review address update.
That's you defining the company head, right?
Yeah,
You can't even do that. You gotta have a clean record.
that's true. That's true. No DUIs. You gotta have a clear DMV record, general manager. Yeah.
How about,
Very good. Done all the employees have it, clear DMV.
Schools too.
Are they checking them?
Is that the one you got?
No, it's got a change on it, because I added the EPO.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we added another one, DMV record. You check the DMV of all employees?
I think when they start, upon new hire, they have to.
You can't have a DUI.
You better be checking them on a regular basis.
No, because, yeah.
Your insurance.
Every year.
A check, right?
Yeah, so we have to get a copy of the driver's license and submit that to the insurance and another place, and I'm not sure what happens
And they
with that.
they do a quarterly, the insurance should do a quarterly.
From what we're told if we get a traffic infraction or a speeding ticket, insurance is gonna
Yeah.
bill it.
But I look, but in my driving time, they've gone through and they've gone through your driving record as you go. Every quarterly, they go through your insurance, goes through the person's driving record. If anything shows up, because the person could be driving here, never say a word about it. If you get 2 or 3 tickets, you're out, you're done.
Right.
So,
Or DUI. What if you get a DUI?
you're done.
You're done. How does he know? How do you
Because
know?
I'm assuming these guys are all driving that truck out there, so you're a commercial driver, right?
No, I don't drive a dump truck now.
No, I'm talking about your,
The guys, right now, there's one, we have one CDL and then somebody else is working on it. So-
okay, well, like I say, if they was to get a drug use or a DUI, they'd be done,
Right.
so.
Or they have
No.
a driver.
At least just being up there, being responsible for the treatment plant for 12,000 people's drinking water.
Yeah,
I gotta keep my nose
I
clean.
get it, I get it. You're not there yet, we're working on getting you there, but you're not there yet.
Do you want me to?
Wow,
Well,
it's
as soon as-
7:30, so.
This was,
5 minutes.
this was for later, this was actually for later.
So,
You
okay.
can look
fair
at
enough.
it, we'll talk at the regular
Give me
board
time.
The only thing that jumps out at me is the time cards thing, and the fact that those, if they're not, we need those to be done sooner rather, that's the only thing, jumps, you know what I mean? Time cards, because I know the Happy Valley Community Committee asked for the time cards for a number of years to kind of check in on some of the salary charges, et cetera.
And because of COVID, we couldn't look at them, so that's just one thing
They're in the book. I looked at them today, they're in the book.
Well, the thing is, depending on how many you have either a machine or you're writing it in, what are the hours, are we rounding them off, do we have sick leave slips or vacation slips for people to fill out? Can you pull those and verify with that, are you doing it on a regular basis? Those are things that overseen in the general idea of an office, there's nobody to provide checks and balances here. So I guess that's what we have to do, is the checks and balances.
And who do you have to do it?
I think, watching and asking for that, you auditing I think internally, the district needs to be auditing itself. You know what I mean, the district general manager needs audited, maybe the office manager, some other designated person would, and then also, queries from the Happy Valley.
Right, we
I don't
don't
know
see,
how much effort.
right, we didn't see any checks and balances, that's what was one of the big concerns.
And some of that can be policies and procedures that need to be followed, and an auditor, or say an accounting auditor, could come in and ask someone off the top of it, or a board member could come in and ask an employee, that's all right or not.
It just need to come in and start looking at records, that's all.
Yeah.
So, that's not a problem. How vacation slips were stored in the past, I don't know. Right now, someone asked for vacation and I got to approve it, and I stuck it to the wall and they're on the paperwork, because I don't know where it goes. But I see what you're saying, that if you wanted to go back and compare, okay, this person asked for a week off, but their time card says they got an extra day, I see what
The
you're saying.
time card said they worked.
Right. So,
So also,
well, first off, that would never fly. If they asked for time off and it was approved and it said they worked, then there better be an explanation for it. So, now I've asked for like 4 days off, but I only took 3 because something happened or something like that. And I don't know that I've ever provided an explanation for that and put it in with everything. But-
Your time card, or
But my time card,
your vacation slip needs to be altered,
Yeah.
and somebody has to sign it, stating where initially,
yeah,
that it was changed.
so,
do you sign the time cards? Does anybody else see that?
the general manager does, and I did this last round of payroll just because I was looking over everything.
So, do you have job cards for like each breakers? Do you do things like that? Where, like, say Happy Valley Road X, do you have people assigned to that and they fill out their time card that way, or anything like a job assessment, cost assessment?
It's too much.
Okay.
It's too much fun. That's the problem, this is just too.
I don't know that I follow what you're saying.
Well, like say, okay, so job A over here, and then you got job B over here, okay, so,
Oh, yeah, so we do, on our time card, we have, codes, like, 542 is the treatment plan, or
okay.
522 is the treatment plan, 542 is something, administration is 560 something, yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. But they're on the time cards.
Oh,
Okay,
So
we're
backflow
gonna be
prevention
talking
is-
this at the meeting, so.
but sometime,
Yeah,
yeah, I think, yeah, the 18th is real full, but
yeah,
sometime in September.
yeah.
So I came up here.
Okay, I'm gonna close
I
the
came up
meeting.
here for nothing?
Yeah.
Just some nice answer. I got two things down there. General discussion about politics.
Do you want to say something?
Two. 2 minutes.
No, you
So
said
3 minutes, every 3 minutes.
I'll give you 5 minutes,
Okay.
We didn't hear.
Tier
Bill
1,
wants to talk.
Bill wants to speak.
this is the MOU. Tier 1 employees were hired on or before 2004. Tier 2 were hired after, August 1 of 2004, and 3 were hired on or after July 1st of 2011. I came on at the very end of 2016, and I was, because I worked over another water district for over 5 years, I was allowed, they needed to bring somebody over with a T4 that could confidently take the state oral review and get the T5, and I said I could do it in a certain amount of time frame, which was a huge risk, but I did it anyway. And they did allow me to negotiate my sick time and my vacation time. And I didn't know at the time that nobody else got to do that, but I did. So I do get a little bit of the tier 2 benefit. So I accrue 4 hours of sick time and 4 hours of vacation. Currently, until the end of my 5th year, in December, I'll go up to 6, because that's what was negotiated. Just to be fair, in case you stumble across that, that's how that all works.
Because you know we will, Bill. We will.
Well, you haven't yet, so.
That's because you weren't.
Okay, your minutes are up, Bill.
No, listen.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, I was just gonna blow through this list, but if you don't want me to.
No.
Okay.
No, they're gonna close through it.
What about the drug testing and all that you said that you would like to see changed?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the policy change, but the
Okay.
board writes the policy and the manager enforces the policy, so.
Is that,
I know, look at Paul.
That's number 9 on your list, I added it.
9 on the list, all right.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Oh, I see that there, yeah, it's written up. All right, got it, good.
Good job.
Swell, you know, this, just as a closing remarks, they, thank you all for showing up. I think you all contributed significantly to me understanding your expectations. And so, so thanks for that. I'll make these edits in strikeout and underline for changes for the board. I'm just, as a daylighting it to you all, it strikes me we could do maybe a little bit more homework on how, I mean, for example, someone who asked the question, have I seen another DM's request for a similar water company? And I haven't, but I'd like to, and I don't know if I can do that. Get familiar with it and be ready for Wednesday to say, yeah, this is what we need. So I feel like I need to do a little more homework, but I don't think it wouldn't be.
Is this on the agenda for the 18th?
Yes.
This is the, yeah, because the assumption was.
The 25th.
25th.
This Wednesday.
What did I say, the 18th?
Yeah.
Go back in time. So,
You lost them.
and that was because there was, at the last meeting, you all might have been here, there was a certain amount of, let's get this thing underway, let's get going, and I think you all heard me voice the subject that we might not, we need to be financially in one piece when we put this announcement out, in my humble opinion.
Correct.
So I don't know that the timing is like breakneck on this, so I think if we don't take action on it Wednesday, we won't be any worse for it. I don't know, all right, so that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to pass it and get the applications and then.
But it has to be right, right?
Yeah.
You know,
True.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know if I'm comfortable with it being right now, finishing this meeting.
Okay.
Just
So everybody
daylight
says-
finish all.
Your 2 minutes is up.
You get some.
Thank you, Bill. Look at the size of that facility.
What? Where's that?
Did you adjourn?
Not yet.
Yes. But I'd like to.
Keeping you. And what are you looking at?
Yeah.
Want to share?
So Bill pamphlet from recycling, Bob McMurray and Associates, experts in executive search. So it's sent to the general manager, the CCCSD, and they'd love to come help us find the ideal candidate.
No, that's a job flyer.
That's a job flyer, which
Yeah,
is.
so we get those, like, I get them on occasion.
Okay.
I was just showing you, you wanted to see something else? Then-
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's all it is.